Hi, I am ThatPaulGuy, and it's Thursday. Thursday, May 14th. Can't believe it's already halfway through the month already. Goodness. Thursday, May 14th, 2020, and I'll start you out like I do every week lately, giving you my public service announcement as we kind of open up the states and everything, and everybody is getting back out. Let's not make it all crazy and everything, okay? Remember social distancing. Remember to wash your hands, hygiene. If your state or an area requires face covering, do something. I mean, typically that's more to help somebody not catch whatever you have, but try to be courteous and try to be patient and all that stuff, and we'll get through this. But just don't be in such a hurry. Hopefully we'll get sports back and crowds and people going out to the beaches and bars, and we can handle it responsibly and everybody will be fine. So got your fingers crossed, got my fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll be doing pretty well. Anyway, that being said, a couple updates coming later. Probably next week I'll have some monthly updates or maze updates concerning the spider bite, some projects going on and things of that nature. So we'll cover all of that later. But for now, just in case you missed last week. And then we're going to start you out in space news. China, last week when we were talking about China's launch of their Long March 5B rocket, which carries their new shuttle, their new capsule prototype for manned missions. I said that it launched, and I hadn't heard back anything yet, but I would let you know as soon as I did. Well, as it turns out, there were some anomalies in that launch. And the anomalies, well, okay, we'll just say it launched into the wrong orbit. It had some debris falling back to Earth. It had a few issues. There was a couple of issues. They say anomalies, but then the news comes out that there was indeed some other things, like it was spreading debris, which has been a common problem lately with some Chinese launches, and that it ended up being in the wrong orbit. The capsule itself, though, did come back safely, and the parachutes and the heat shield and everything seemed to work just fine. So that being said, the test, you kind of have to regard the test itself as a success. But as far as 11 of these going up to build their space station starting later this year, maybe next year, that might be in question a little bit. You got to get this thing in the right orbit. That's pretty precise stuff that you got to take care of, and it's a long way from happening at the moment. In tech news, the past couple of weeks or week and a half or so have seen a lot of rumors and things coming out about AMD that have really raised some eyebrows. There's been some rumors, some confirmed, some a little bit in between. Some of it having to do with their notebooks. They just released those processors not too long ago, those 4000 series processors that are starting to come out in notebooks now, that the performance seems to be really, really good. Some rumors on a new APU that should be coming out that I'll mention in a moment, but some releases over the past week and a half or so of two new Ryzen processors that are actually budget processors that are pretty darn good. The Ryzen 3 3100 and the Ryzen 3 3300X both got released. They're both 4-core, 8-thread. I believe they run at 3.6 and 3.8 respectively. But they are, what you could say, I guess, budget monsters. These things are being compared by several sources and several reviewers as being on par with Intel's i7 7700K, which was out a couple years ago, and until not too long ago, was actually the top dog on the block as far as gaming and processing of that nature. 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, this thing held the reins. So it's for $150. Both of these are under $150, and you're talking about a huge amount of processing power at a very, very budget-friendly price. Needless to say, there's probably going to be a lot of gaming systems and a lot of budget builds and all that will be built off of these. But if that's what they can do with a budget, think of what they're going to be able to do as they increase their performance when they move those into Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, and Ryzen 9, and maybe even with the next series of processors, what's going to happen later this year when we get to see those. The other thing that's rumored is the Ryzen 7 4700G. Now the G on the end means it's a graphics chip, and the 4700 doesn't quite fit right with what you might expect, because they released a couple of Ryzen 3s that had APUs, but they haven't released a Ryzen 5 that has an APU. This Ryzen 7 is supposed to have the CPU and the graphics on the same chip, making it an APU, and it's supposed to be 8 cores, 16 threads. This thing is supposed to be a monster. Now, it's not quite confirmed by AMD, but there's enough sources out there, including Tom's Hardware, which I'll leave a link to there, that have reported this thing as just being a complete beast. Now, we don't know when it's supposed to be coming out or actually the final details, but there's enough benchmarks out there to kind of give this some credence. So AMD is maybe looking at a really, really good year overall. Oh, and did I mention that there's 2 new consoles that have their hardware in it? Both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 will be touting AMD graphics processor APUs in their hardware coming out at the holiday season. So we're about to see some really, really impressive stuff coming out from this company. Speaking of new consoles, Austin Evans, you might have heard of his name. He's a YouTuber that has a tech channel, very, very popular, millions of followers, has done an exclusive on the Xbox Series X. Now, this is an actual in-house. He actually went to Microsoft and had a chance to sit down with them, tear it down, go through all the parts, see what was in it, get all the explanation, all the specs, go through the entire thing, how it's built, why it was built that way, what is in it, and even some demos of some current generation stuff that are showing off some of the features that this new console is going to have. Now, in this case, they didn't show any new Xbox Series X titles, but they were showing the swapping capability, the instant loading capability, and a few of the lighting effects that were not programmed into some of these older games. And yes, it was running on Xbox and Xbox. It was running on Xbox and Xbox 360 games as well as Xbox One games. So they showed us a couple of different games that were programmed for earlier versions that are compatible on the new Series X. But he got a chance to sit down with him, and I was all happy when I saw this, and I was pretty excited about it until I realized this was done a month ago. He had this exclusive out a month ago, and I just now got around to finding it. I don't know what took me so long because I'm usually up on that kind of stuff, but I'll leave a link to that so you can watch the whole video. It's pretty fascinating and pretty cool, and well worth the watching. In gaming news, there's a new Mortal Kombat DLC that's going to be coming out soon. I believe it's on May 26th, and it's got some things like updated storylines, friendships, whatever that may be, and 3 more player characters that you can add to the stuff that you've already might be playing. It's going to be Shiva, Fujin, and RoboCop will be added to, if you had the Combat Pack, you already had Terminator and Spawn and a few others that were in there as well. So these will be added as well. And we're going to see what it's like. But I believe that's May 26th that's going to be coming out. Don't know the price. I didn't pay attention to it. I doubt it's free. None of these things are. But it looks like it's pretty cool. There's a demo on it. Again, I'm going to leave a link so you guys can see. But new Mortal Kombat stuff coming out. So if you're into fighting games, there you go. I didn't know whether to put this in tech or gaming because it's kind of both. Sort of like the last thing that I left in tech, but it could have been gaming also. But the PlayStation 4 has now passed 110 million sales. It's sold more than 110 million consoles in its 7-year run, and that is second in consoles only to the PlayStation 2, which is the highest selling game console or game machine sold of all time. That sold about 155 million copies, and I believe it was like a 5.5-year run. It is still by far the most popular. The second 2, or places 2 and 3, are both held by handhelds, and those are held by the Game Boy Color, both being the same thing, and then the Nintendo DS. Those sold, I believe it was 118 and 153 or 154 million. Pretty darn close, but now the PlayStation 4 is firmly in 4th place with 110 million units sold. Will it take the place, or will it catch up to the PlayStation 2? It's pretty doubtful. It's near the end of its run, and the new consoles are going to be coming out at the end of this year, so it's not likely that it's going to top the 155 million. We might see it overtake the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, but that remains to be seen. We'll just have to see what happens. But 110 million consoles, that's a lot of cheddar they took from us. We mentioned new gaming consoles coming out at the end of the year, but wouldn't it be a shame to have to just program on the same old gaming engines? Unreal doesn't think so. Actually, Epic, who makes the Unreal Engine, didn't think so. They've already been in works with it, and early next year will release the Unreal Engine 5. They're currently on Unreal Engine 4.25, which is what they've been using to do some of the games that will be released for the Series X and the PS5. But the Unreal Engine 5 is going to have 2 features that will make it stand out from any other version. Now, if the Unreal Engine sounds a little bit familiar, but you're not really sure, it's because it's been out for about 20 years. They've been using some version of this, starting out with the Unreal Engine, the original one, in about 98 or 99. The most recent is the Unreal Engine 4 version, which has had games like Borderlands, Star Wars Fallen Order, and all the Gears of War series have been on the Unreal Engine. So this is going to, I mean, it's pretty much the standard by which all other engines have been measured by, but it's going to have two features that are going to set it apart from anything else that's currently out. The first one is called Nanites. And what this does is this actually gives the ability to reproduce graphics on a scale of, let's explain this by every single thing in a computer model or every single thing in a game model is built up of little triangles. It has to have 3 points, and those 3 points make up a triangle where the light and shadow and color are all assigned to it in one degree or another. Now, sometimes this can be done in real time, but usually that's a fairly large triangle count. And by large, I mean we're talking about hundreds of thousands. But with this new Nanites process, they can actually take something that is video ready, as in film ready. They don't have to worry about how big the model is, how much space it takes up, or anything like that. And they can actually draw these triangles down to the billions. So that means you can have something as detailed as the eye can possibly pick up. Whereas if you scroll in on something, especially an older game, you can see sort of pixelated, or you can see colors or what have you that are a little bit off, or they don't look quite right. And even in games that you're playing now, you might witness some things where the modeling is just not quite as sharp or not quite as good as you think it might be, or it's an obvious clue that, hey, that's a video game and that's not real life. Well, this might take the place of that, and the smoothness of objects now, and the detail in some of these objects, you will not be able to discern from film quality models that they're going to be using in motion pictures and feature films. So it's a huge process, and they've got it down to where this is not going to add any processing power to the gaming engine itself. So it doesn't matter how big the file is, it doesn't matter what the old rendering time might have been, something like that. This is going to take care of this in a very quick manner and handle huge files effortlessly. This is a huge step, and anybody that's done any programming or used any kind of game engines or anything like that knows about watching poly counts and file sizes. Now you don't have to be concerned with that. You can directly import a model, any kind of model that you draw up, straight into the video game, and it will be able to render and handle that and downsize that to whatever it needs automatically with no loss in resources, no loss in power, no loss in render time. Now the second process is called Lumens. Lumens is an effect where they do global illumination in real time. Now, typically what you would do is you would have a scene or a model or something of that nature. Remember I was talking about being made up of little tiny triangles? Well, all of these things are mapped. There's a certain reaction, or if you're in a scene, there's a certain amount of light or shadows or something like that that's usually baked into that scene. Those things don't change. Now, a couple of things might change on top of that, but the basics of it won't change. They will all stay the same. With this new process, Lumens, all of that goes out the window. This is light that is processed on the fly as it's created, or as the light source moves, or as it's initiated, or as it's turned off in the scene as it goes along. So where typically you would have, say, maybe a desert scene at night. Well, that desert scene at night has a different map for daylight than it does for night. This has one map, and it's all affected differently by what light is introduced in real time. Mountains, inside, outside, caves, whatever, they're all done the same way. And I'm going to leave a link to the demo for Unreal 5 as well. If you got a few minutes, take a look at that demo, because it's just fascinating. And like I said, especially for somebody that's done some modeling or done some using game engines or something like that, it's just something incredible to look at. But all of this is handled basically in real time with no backup, no baked in effects, nothing generic that is added to it, making it a realistic appearance. And combined with Nanites and Lumens together, it's a major leap forward as far as game engines are concerned, the way your game is going to look, how some things will react, how some things are going to, the detail that's going to be in it, or the light, the way things will bounce off of. And you might be able to kind of look at Lumens as maybe software's answer to ray tracing, where you know that there's stuff out there with hardware that will use raw processing power to handle things as quickly as possible. Well, this is the software side of that. And it doesn't take as much processing power to do something like that on the software side with the new process that they've got. So Epic has really outdone themselves. This will be released the next year, 2021. Like I said, they do have Unreal 4.25 that is handling stuff for games being made now. But the games we're looking at a year from now that are coming out on the new series of consoles are going to be incredible, and there will be something just amazing to look at. This gives me hope that we might actually be able to see something that's going to actually be 4K at 60 frames per second and look very, very good. And finally, and you're kidding, right? Hazel Lofton, who lives in Scotland, is passing out some apologies today to roughly 700 households in their neighboring area. As it turns out, her 4-year-old got a little bit of an itch and managed to somehow knock a power pole or utility pole over, and the transformer fell and knocked out power to these households. Pretty incredible stuff. Oh, did I mention that the 4-year-old that got the itch is a bull, and she lives on a farm, and it was trying to scratch its butt of all things and knocked over the utility pole and took out power to the whole area? Can't make this stuff up, folks. Anyway, that's all I got for this week. So until a bit later this weekend or early next week, like I said, that's all I got. So you're welcome to share, subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down, leave me any kind of comments. Get a chance to go back and especially look at that Unreal demo. If you're into gaming or you're into things like that at all, go back and look at it because it's fascinating stuff. I was really, really impressed. But anyway, that's all I got for right now. So until maybe later this week, I'll see you later.